Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Glenn McGowan. This is Atlas Bowen. Today I'm taking my C4 up the street to get it aligned. It's the last thing I have to do since I did my coilover swap. So once that's done, I'm going to start on my 6-speed to 5-speed swap. I have pretty much everything I need for the swap. I'm waiting on one part, but when I get this back, I'll be able to jack the thing up and we can go over all the parts that I have and get this thing ready to get all the ZF6 stuff out of it. So right now I'm going to hop in this thing, go get it aligned and get it back here, and then we'll go over everything.
This week's video is brought to you by atlasbone.com. Shop our site for Corvette performance parts, merchandise, and much more. See the link in the description or visit atlasbone.com.
Just left. The car feels so good. I was definitely off a lot from my home, alignment that I did in the shop, but at least it got me to be able to drive the car up here. So it feels really good. I'll be back in about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll look at my parts, and then we'll get this thing jacked up so I'm tearing it apart. Okay, so I'm back. The alignment went well. The car is now driving straight up the road, which is a plus. So moving from one thing right into another, I'm going to get into showing you all the parts that I got for this TKX swap. So let's look at that stuff right now, and then we can maybe get this thing up on the jack stands. Okay, so starting from the back of the engine, and then we'll go towards the back of the transmission. So starting out, I'm going to use a 4+3 bell housing. That is what I'm waiting for currently. I bought one off of eBay for 170 bucks or something like that. That guy's also throwing in a couple little odds and ends that I needed for the slave cylinder, like that little pin that goes from the slave cylinder to the fork. The bell housing that I bought has the fork in it. This was a 4+3 car, if you didn't know that, and I had the bell housing and all that stuff, but I sold it a while back when I did the ZF6 swap, so I had to reorder that, which wasn't a lot of money, but it was like the little things. There's also like a rubber boot that goes from the bell housing over the slave cylinder. That guy was throwing that in too, so little things like that that I ended up getting rid of, which I kind of wish I would have kept now. But 4+3 bell housing. I ended up buying a new slave cylinder, and this was like 30 bucks or something like that. And these just come like that, just a bare slave cylinder, no boot, no rod. So that's what you got to kind of keep in mind too. Like if you are going to be doing this, make sure you get those little bits. And a lot of times too, if someone's like parting one of these cars out, they'll have all that stuff when they're selling the bell housing. So I just reached out to the guy. I'm like, hey, I'm looking for these things. He's like, oh, I have them. I'll throw them in. Cool. So that works out well. I ended up going with pretty much a stock replacement clutch. I went with a company called Valio. Valio makes a lot of BMW stuff. So when I see that, I'm like, oh, it's probably pretty decent. I'm not putting like a super cheap clutch in here or getting a super expensive one because, like I said, I'm probably going to be doing some sort of engine swap in the future, and I didn't want to, spend too much and have to change that out. So this was just under 200 bucks for this clutch. One thing I always do when I'm buying like a clutch kit is I buy like an OEM throwout bearing. It's kind of like my thing, because a lot of times if you buy a cheaper clutch kit, the throwout bearing's like half plastic, half metal, and they can be like noisy or come apart. So it's always been like my thing. So I ordered a brand new GM throwout bearing for that. Now, the flywheel I have on my car is a factory, 350 4+3 flywheel. Now, When I did the ZF6 swap, I had a whole like ordeal with Fidenza makes one specifically for that swap, which was like completely wrong. It was too thick, and you need to actually use a thinner flywheel, which is the factory flywheel for an 85 Corvette with a 4+3 trans. That thing is new. It probably has maybe 60 miles on it or so, and I haven't really beaten on it too much, so I will probably use that, just kind of sand it off, clean up the surface for this clutch. Now moving back, TKX transmission right here. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. With this, I bought a offset shifter when I bought the transmission from Hanlon Motorsports, because if this was centered in the car, the shifter on the Corvette is to the left. Now, I have a 2-inch offset shifter from them, which should do the trick. So that'll sit off that way, that much. So this has got to go in there, and this one will come out, which we'll get to. This thing was, I forget what it was, maybe 120 or 140 bucks or something like that, but you'll need to run that because the straight one will not hit. You'll have to cut out your tunnel. Now, in that whole tunnel area of the transmission, this being a 4+3 car, those cars have the shifter linkage assembly kind of bolted in the tunnel. So it's not a tunnel like this. It has like a recess area where the forks and stuff go through the tunnel into the side of the transmission, if you follow me. When I did the ZF6 swap, I bought a patch panel that puts a normal like tunnel over it. I cut it out and I epoxied it in there. So it's like a normal tunnel from 89 to 96 C4 Corvette. So, you know, if you were doing this and you had the 4+3 tunnel, you will have to cut out that part of the tunnel just to allow the shifter in that area. So keep that in mind. Now, I haven't seen those patch panels available recently, but I also haven't been looking for them. But I think with the company, it was like ATC or something like that, and it's a full fiberglass patch panel, and it gives you that little bit cleaner look in the transmission tunnel area. So that's one thing just to keep in the back of your mind if your car is a 4+3 car. Now, if you have a car that has a ZF6 already, you don't have to worry about that because the tunnel's already taken care of. So that's one little thing to keep in the back of your mind. Like I said, when I did the ZF6 swap, all those videos has all the step-by-step stuff that I did originally. So the one thing that I got for this was the bracket that adapts the C-beam or whatever you want to call it from the diff to the transmission. This was $79 or something from Speedway Motor. I ended up buying it from Walmart.com because it was like, I don't know, like 10 bucks cheaper or something like that, ordering it through them, but it came from Speedway Motor. Like I have the box somewhere, but it was from Speedway Motor. Now, it is listed as a TKO transmission mount for a C4 Corvette. I know the actual dimensions of this are the same as the TKO, so I just assumed it was the same. Now, where it bolts in up at the bottom here was okay, and I will zoom in this at some point, but at the bottom, it bolts right up here, like the traditional mounting location. Then I realized the other two mounts were down lower here. Now, as you can see, I made these pieces right here, and I'll zoom in a minute. I made these to kind of bolt through this here, and then they bolt to the side of the transmission. So I guess the TKO, the earlier ones, had the mounting bolts at the bottom. I saw a picture online of one, and that's what it kind of looks like. So that's kind of what you're going to run into if you run this. Buy this because it's cheap, and then, you know, you could probably just bend a piece of metal down in here and then bolt it up for extra support, because it kind of like is sitting against the tail shaft here, and then you have two bolts up in the front here, and it's thick. It looks like it's like 3/8 steel, so it's pretty thick, but it definitely needs some extra support here. That's why I made those brackets on here. So moving right along, you're gonna need a yoke for this transmission. Now, it's a 31 spline yoke. I bought this maybe off of Amazon, and I'll leave the links and stuff for this in the description of all these videos if you're looking for the stuff. This is a 31 spline, and I believe it is a 1330 U-joint, 1330 U-joint. So it is gonna be a 1330 to a 1310, which I conveniently have since I did my, almost the same thing when I put the 4-speed in my blue car. So I have an extra one of these 1330 to 1310 for the factory drive shaft. another little thing like that you got to get. So yoke, and then the U-joint for the drive shaft, that's all done there. Now I ended up buying just a couple little things, like I needed a shift knob, right? So I bought this is off of Amazon too. It was like 25 bucks or something. It's like a weighted 5-speed one there. And it's got a 3/8 16 hole in it. So for the shifter, now, this is the one I got. It's from Sicky Manufacturing. This is listed for a T56 6-speed shifter. I also have the same one on my Hirsch shifter on the Corvette because I had to like cut it and modify it. So I ended up using this because I wanted something short. Same thing here. I wanted something shorter in the car and something straight. There's a ton of shifter arms that are like bent back and stuff like that for relatively cheap. I see them for like 20 bucks and stuff like that, but I wanted something straight, which is a little bit harder to find. They had a lot of ones for T56s, the early T56s that are in the LT1 cars that had like almost like an angle here. I guess that's the way the shifter mount is. So I couldn't use that. So I just ended up going back and getting this again. And of course, it's a little bit different on the shifter itself. Where is it? I'm going to have to probably either grind down the top of this or in here because the holes are off by like enough to where you can't put the bolts on. So it's off just a little bit. So I may just grind that down. Once I know this fits in the car, I'll probably just grind this down a little bit so this bolts up in here correctly like that. So that's pretty much everything that you're going to need to put this in the car itself. Now, there may be a couple things. I have for my slave cylinder, I have the, like, you know, the ZF6 style or that your car, slave master cylinder car, and I have that steel braided line from that car too. I may have to adapt the fitting from that line to the slave cylinder. I don't know, I don't remember. I don't have the old one here to take a look at it, but once I get it jacked up, just little things like that. But you know, we'll address that as we go step by step in the process. So I think I have everything covered here for the most part. And then we got to do fluid and then like wiring up the reverse lights and the speedometer and stuff like that. But that's down the line once we get it in the car. So that is that for now. So yeah, let's get this thing jacked up and then start tearing into it. Just wanted to show you what I was talking about with the bracket here. So it bolts underneath there like that. And then this is normally just open in here like that. So I made those brackets like that. Just a little extra support here, and then it bolts in there. And these bolts go right through here. And I ended up using my own bolts because the hardware they gave me really didn't make sense. But so I just ran some through bolts through here to the other side. That one has a nut in it. The other one I had to use a nut there, and it's just kind of mocked in place here. There's also like, they give you this like bolt, and I believe this goes like here like this, something like that. Because if you look on the inside there, it's got, you know, a space. It's kind of hard to tell here on the bench, but underneath of it for the front hole here, and then this bolt goes through there like that, something like that. But we'll figure it out once we get it in the car. But I just wanted to show you that if you get this for this transmission, this is going to be something you're going to have to address, which isn't the end of the world, you know what I mean? And for the price, you really can't beat it. Okay, so car is jacked up. I just connected the negative battery cable. I even removed the shift knob to kick off the project. So next week we'll get into taking everything out of the car. So if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Thanks for watching.